I always have an apprehension when I'm standing between everybody and lunch. So it's just exactly that time of the day. So I'll try and keep it interesting and quick, so we have some more time for questions. Tell if that's okay.
Good, perfect.
So we had a couple of conversations about Amazon today. So there's one confession that I don't make very often, especially not in front of my wife, which is the fact that I spent way too much on Amazon. Now why? And there was some conversation in the previous session about Amazon and everybody professing their loyalty for Amazon. But I think it's because they know what I want to buy before I know that I want to buy it. And the same is true of Apple. I think that's the two brands that I'm most loyal to. I want to take another perspective and see, as a consumer, that's the way I feel. So we said, why don't we take a look at, as an enterprise, what do I need to do to make consumers feel that way? And that's the perspective with which we've put together this framework or thought process in terms of how to use technology to achieve personalization. In the first session this morning, what Dan said was music to my ears in some sense, because he said, we are a travel company. We want to focus on the travel experience. We are not a technology company. And what we want to do as a company is take that trouble out of your hands and be the technology company that helps you enable that travel experience. So in our mind, we think that these are the top priorities for the travel industry today. I don't want to beat a dead horse and talk about improving experience. I think there's enough said about that. Again, I'll use the term millennial so that I don't get a clap, Del. But the expectation from that segment of consumers is instant gratification, and it's all about experience. There's no concept of brand loyalty. I am a points hoarder myself, but what I see with a lot of the younger folks is that they don't want to actually be looking at that. They'd rather go with what is the unique experience. The other aspect is, in our industry, we've seen that the ability to drive profits from the core product has been stagnant or at best very minimally increasing over the last many years. So the opportunity to drive profitability exists when you look at the ancillary revenue channels, whether it's a product channel or whether it's a service channel that you can offer from an ancillary standpoint. The digitization of operations, that's a given. I think we've got to leverage what's out there and make sure we are as efficient as we can be. And the fourth one is obviously leveraging emerging technologies. We believe that by leveraging emerging technologies and combining that with the power of data, and our industry sits on tons and tons of data, historical data, that at best is being under-leveraged today, especially, again, I'm going to get dinged here for saying big data, especially with the advent of big data, there's a lot of potential. Combining these two can help you achieve personalization, and we believe that personalization is one single aspect that will help you achieve not just enhanced customer experience, but also ability to drive ancillary revenues up. Now, we want to talk about two attributes that contribute to delivering successful personalization. A lot of us here speak a lot about how do we understand the customer better in order to achieve that personalization. In our mind, that's only one aspect of being able to deliver better personalization. Now, it's a given that we need to understand the customer's tastes and preferences, potentially to a level where we know them one-to-one, at least for our most profitable and most valuable customers. But the other aspect that we don't often give enough consideration to is the aspect of your technology and engineering maturity to drive that. So what do I mean by that? We've had instances of large airlines launching basic economy fares today, right? But you've seen that after the first one announced it, there's probably a 12-month lag before the next one is able to get that out in the market, right? One of the reasons that contributes to that, it's not the single reason, but one of the main reasons that contributes to that is the lack of engineering maturity to be able to do that from a technology standpoint. Our aging systems don't support that. How do we enhance those to be able to deliver that in a much faster manner? And that's where the engineering maturity comes into place. Now, going back to Amazon, Amazon does a release every few seconds to update their platform, right? I mean, not all of us need to be Amazon from an engineering maturity standpoint, But I think a lot of us would love to be Amazon from a customer loyalty standpoint. So taking a page out of that book, is there a way we can actually achieve better maturity so that we can do better competitive responses, be able to put together things much faster in the customer journey? And relate that back to our millennial conversation. Today's consumers that use your platforms for engagement, be it the website, be it the digital channels, be it even the voice channels with your call center, they are the same people who are using Twitter, Facebook, reading all the fake news, and all of that, right? So they expect the same experience that they get from these next-gen technology platforms from your digital channels. And what can you do to bridge that gap? I don't think we need to be offering the exact same level of maturity like a leading social media platform or something like that, but can they see at least some resemblance in terms of the user experience? So those are the aspects that engineering maturity will help address. So with that in mind, we've created an assessment methodology where we look at enterprises from two different aspects. One, their degree of maturity from a personalization standpoint, and two, their degree of maturity from an engineering standpoint. And based on those two parameters, we have an assessment framework that helps us determine where that enterprise is today with the goal of being able to set a roadmap for the future. Do all of us need to be in the top right hand of that quadrant? Probably not, because to every improvement that we make, there is a cost benefit associated with it. So you have to look at your own context before deciding where you want to be, but knowing where you are is essential in determining where you want to go from there. From a personalization maturity standpoint, I feel like I might be preaching to the choir a little bit on this one, but the personalization journey going from a mass market sort of approach to a level where you have such great customer loyalty and understanding of the customer that the customer is an advocate for you. You can take into account the number of us that have actually given free promotion to Amazon this morning itself. Right? So what we did based on that is we arrived, and this is a subset of the attributes that we use for the assessment. We arrived at a set of attributes that we would look at, which would then help us rank and determine where an organization stands from a personalization maturity standpoint. After we do that assessment, we are able to sort of map it back to the 4 different levels in terms of the attributes, and then sort of use that in the automated assessment that we do to determine your positioning. Similarly, on the engineering maturity side, we've come up with 23 different disciplines that an organization needs to focus on. And these cut across not just technology, but things like the people element, things like business value, what you want and how you derive that. And these combined attributes are then looked at across 5 different levels, right? So does everyone need to operate in a lean startup mode? Probably not. But do you want to be in a mode where every feature set that you're offering a customer is an optimized product that you can enhance in a really quick fashion? Probably yes. Now, again, it's very contextual as to determining what level you want to be, but these 2 different attributes help us to sort of tell you where you are in that chain. Now, how do we propose that you achieve this? Now, when you look at a technology ecosystem, a lot of times what happens is you are looking at smaller pieces of the puzzle and trying to address it. So what I mean by that, oftentimes in our engagements, we hear customers talking about, I want to improve my website performance with respect to personalization. I want to make my mobile app more personalized. Now, going back and looking at all of those engagements and the work that we've done over the past 5 to 10 years, we said, what sort of outlook should you have from a technology landscape standpoint? And we came up with this 3-layered sort of structure where you look at data. That is the part that helps you understand your customer. Systems of engagement, the part that actually helps you engage with your customer. And the all-important middle integration layer, which is what enables you to get this data to the systems that you utilize it to engage with the customer. Now, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about this, examples of how this can be leveraged, right? Now, if you look at your call center as a channel, right? you don't often see that channel as from a technology standpoint as using a system of engagement, but that's very much the case, because you could build solutions that enable your call center agents to have a more intelligent and proactive conversation with the customer. Today, for instance, in the hotel segment, you would have multiple systems that are being utilized by a front desk agent, right? How do you filter the relevant information for that particular customer and provide it to them? So that's one example. The direct channel is far more straightforward in some sense, because you are actually interfacing directly with the customer without a human element in between, right? Now, when it comes to data, we have a wealth of data that we are sitting on from our historical loyalty programs and things like that. Now, today's day and age, again, coming back to millennials, a lot of them are not shy about putting a lot of data in the public domain. I have arguments with my younger relatives when it comes to posting photographs on Facebook or things like that, right? But they are more revealing in terms of information, less concerned about privacy on a lot of aspects. So if they have put that information out there, the expectation is that why are you not leveraging that to understand me better, right? So there are mechanisms that we use to bring together external data with internal data, and you need to do a certain amount of work to sort of be able to say that XYZ in the public domain is the same person as XYZ in my, in my loyalty database. And once that's done, you have a much richer 360-degree profile of your customer. And I sometimes like to call it 720 degrees, but it's mathematically impossible. But there is a 360 outside of your context and 360 inside of your context. You're marrying that to create a unified. Now, that using mechanisms within the integration layer, such as microservices, APIs, you've heard all the buzzwords, you can use those mechanisms to ensure that these insights are then delivered to every channel, right? One of the big benefits that comes out of it, there's consistency in the experience. How often is it that, you have a conversation on the phone with an agent of a company and then walk into a property or go to the check-in desk at the airport and you have a completely different experience? This mechanism allows you to provide a much more consistent experience across channels. Now, our approach of how we propose you go about doing these kinds of initiatives is to take a combination of a long-term roadmap. So when I say that, what I mean is, using the assessment methodology, figuring out where you are, figuring out where you want to be, and setting a goal for yourself in a 1, 2, 5-year horizon, or whatever time period you think in today's world qualifies as long-term. And then look at smaller initiatives within that, right? So in the assessment, you would have identified parameters that require improvement. Pinpoint some of those as shorter programs as part of the larger roadmap, so that you're able to identify and deliver ROI in a much quicker manner. So the way we propose the next steps in terms of going about doing this is to look at initiatives that are quick wins, which will help you reinvest your ROI into the longer program. So one of the things we need to do when we look at this is to have a reference architecture. So, this is one that we've created, but every organization is going to have its own mechanism to come about this. From that, we identify, if you look at the solutions, we've identified areas which can work across multiple enterprises in a way, in terms of being our differentiator to bring in a faster time to market when you implement these initiatives. So effectively doing this, from our context, we have relationships, we have solutions that we've built and expertise, we bring that to bear. But we believe that in your context as well, leveraging the right partners overall would actually significantly accelerate your time to market in terms of implementing these initiatives. Questions?
Excellent. Come on up. Here. Have a seat. Thank you for that. I'll tell you one thing. After looking at this, and you presented it extremely eloquently, our world is very intimidating. There's a lot to take in, is an awful lot to do. Question I have is, you painted a broad vision about a lot that can happen and a lot of complexity is out there. Could it be that we could actually realize a significant portion of the benefit of this journey to personalization and the assimilation of all these data sources with just the first part of that journey, with just, you talked on that last slide, that path from naivete to nirvana, peppered with these quick hits. Couldn't we get a lot of the benefit with quick hits to start and therefore make this a lot less intimidating?
Well, sure. And, one of the most useful pieces of advice I got along the journey of talking through this is to say that start with looking just at the quick hits. Because when you try to propose the long-term roadmap and justify that, try to get a justification on the ROI, that's when it seems a lot more intimidating. So absolutely, but there are ways and means to manage it in the sense that in your mind, as long as you have that long-term view, selling it internally, externally, getting it done can be using the approach that you mentioned.
Yes, excellent. Now, earlier, one of our panelists, Raj from JetBlue Ventures, we were talking about ancillary revenues, and one of the topics we addressed here is how to use this data personalization to amplify ancillary. Now, he made the point that if people don't travel, you can't generate ancillary revenues for that. Do you buy that supposition, or is there a way for us to monetize people who are in our universe, in our database, without them actually consuming our core product?
I think there is. I think, I'm not sure if you had a chance to read an article, an interview with the CEO of Huawei, where he said, I think there will be a day when we won't charge for the core product.
Interesting.
So his outlook was that, if I can make enough money out of the ancillaries, both on the travel path and off the travel path, I don't need to, charge for the core product. So that's probably the extreme way of looking at it, but I think there's a middle ground that we can achieve where we actually do a lot of transaction offline, right? So if you look at the stats of what percentage of people are actually repeat flyers, I think American in their latest quarterly report, they give a number that's really much lower than I would think, right? In terms of the overall consumer size. So if we are not able to and don't figure out a way to engage them off of the travel cycle, how do we capitalize on those non-repeat travelers? The non-repeat travelers is significantly higher than what you would think. I mean, they had a very small portion of travelers who did repeat travel during the year. So I think there has to be an answer to that.
So you're talking about extending the relationship with the traveler beyond the travel buying and consumption cycle.
Absolutely. And I think another way to look at it would be, I think we've consistently been beating the word experience, right? I think as a consumer, if I were to look at it, I have got today multiple providers offering me different parts of the service. So what I mean by that is, I go to the airline for my airline, I go to the car rental for my car rental, and I have preferred brands for each part of the segment, whether it comes to hotels, car rentals, airlines, right? But increasingly what I think is the person who owns the experience, the company that owns the experience will actually own the customer. So what I mean by that is, if I had an extremely superior experience from one of these providers, who also then offered me the services that the others would do as a partner channel, would I just not go to that person?
Right, I think it makes sense. And actually thinking about another earlier panel, Todd, this morning, talking about their investment and acquisition strategy, and Priceline is a technology company, not a travel company, could be that if you're right, that we can do that we can reach beyond the travel, it's the travel portion itself, that they're in the best position to actually extend and do that and be there. And maybe that's a little unsettling for those who are in other parts or are point solutions in the cycle, for those that are pure play distributors or pure play suppliers. It's a bit disturbing. It's certainly a lot to think about. We do have one question we'll take, and then we'll wrap up the session. For small hotels that need a tool fully integrated from PMS to channel manager to website to booking engine, brand, software, revenue system, etc. It's a lot. Can you help hotels with this?
That is a lot, actually.
That's a lot.
I think if whoever asked the question just drops by at the booth, I'll be there. We can take that one-on-one rather than try to address it
Well, I think you had all of those boxes on one
I
of those
did.
slides,
Yes,
there,
I
plus
did.
a few extra besides. So
Yes.
yeah.
But the answer is very contextual to that specific instance. I don't think there's at least I can't think of a generalized answer that would fit right now. It's very contextual to their own environment.
But as a service provider, NIIT's general answer to questions that end with "Can you help?" the answer would be yes.
Yes, it depends. Yeah, I like the depends part. So.
Sure. We'll let you know. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you,
Appreciate it
Dal.
very much.